The blood felt warm against the cold hospital tile. Elena Carter was 8 months pregnant when her husband punched her in the face. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her belly, begging for someone to save her baby. But no one came. Instead, his mistress stood in the doorway, laughing, actually laughing. She crouched down beside Elena and whispered something so cruel, so calculated, that you will not believe it until you hear it.
My pleasure.
And here is the part
Now
that
we
will haunt you. Elena's best friend of 10 years, the woman she trusted with her darkest secrets, she was in on it too. She had already stolen every dollar Elena had, $400,000. Gone in 15 minutes. Elena had no husband, no money, no best friend. She was bleeding on a hospital floor, about to lose her baby, and utterly alone. Or so she thought. Because 200 miles away, a phone was ringing in a billionaire's penthouse. A phone call from a woman with dementia who had kept a secret for 30 years. A secret about a father Elena never knew existed. What happens next will shock you. It will break your heart. And by the end, it will remind you why justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Stay with me until the very end, because the final twist, you will never see it coming. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are listening from today. And if this story moves you, that subscribe button is right there. One click and you will never miss another story like this one. Now let us go back to 48 hours before everything fell apart. The blood felt warm against the cold hospital tile. Elena Carter pressed her palm against her swollen belly as she tried to crawl toward the nurse's station. Her nose was broken. She could feel the cartilage shifted wrong beneath the skin, could taste copper pooling in her mouth. But the physical pain meant nothing compared to the terror seizing her chest. Her baby, her 8-month-old baby, was in danger. Behind her, Derek Mitchell stood with his fist still clenched, breathing hard through his teeth. The man she had married 4 years ago, the man she had trusted with her future, her dreams, her body, the man who had just punched her in the face hard enough to send her crashing to the floor. From the doorway of the consultation room, another figure watched. Victoria Lawson leaned against the frame with her arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corners of her painted lips. She did not rush to help. She did not scream for assistance. She simply observed, like a scientist watching an experiment unfold exactly as predicted. Elena reached toward the hallway. Her vision was blurring at the edges. "Please," she whispered. "My baby. Someone help my baby." Victoria's designer heels clicked against the tile as she crouched beside Elena. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with the metallic smell of blood. "Sweetheart," Victoria said softly, almost tenderly, "this is exactly what was supposed to happen. You were never going to keep that baby, or that husband, or anything else." Alarms began blaring somewhere in the distance. Elena heard shouting, footsteps, the squeak of rubber soles on polished floors. But she could not focus on any of it. The only thing that mattered was the sharp cramping in her abdomen, the wetness spreading beneath her hospital gown, the terrifying possibility that she was losing everything. The last thing she saw before consciousness slipped away was Victoria waving goodbye with her perfectly manicured fingers. 48 hours earlier, Elena had still believed in her marriage. She stood in her kitchen that Tuesday morning, flipping pancakes on the griddle while Derek scrolled through his phone at the breakfast table. The house was beautiful, a 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Elena had made the down payment herself with money saved from her years as a senior financial analyst. Derek had contributed nothing but opinions about the paint colors. "Breakfast is ready," she said, sliding a plate in front of him. Derek grunted without looking up. His thumbs moved rapidly across the screen, typing something that made him smile. Elena touched her belly. At 8 months pregnant, she felt enormous, ungainly, perpetually exhausted. But she had given up her career for this. Derek had insisted she focus on family, on preparing for the baby, on being available. She had agreed because she loved him, because she believed in the life they were building together. "Who are you texting?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Work stuff." Derek shoved the phone into his pocket and stood. "I have to go. Big meeting." He kissed her forehead with the mechanical precision of a man completing an item on his checklist. Elena watched him grab his keys, straighten his tie in the hallway mirror, and disappear through the garage door without once meeting her eyes. The house fell silent. Elena sat at the table and stared at the pancakes growing cold on Derek's untouched plate. Something was wrong. She had felt it for months, this creeping distance between them, this sense that she was living with a stranger who wore her husband's face. But every time she tried to address it, Derek accused her of being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones, he would say dismissively. You are being irrational. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was imagining things. She cleaned the kitchen, showered, and dressed for her lunch date with Jessica Palmer. Jessica had been her best friend since their freshman year at Ohio State. 10 years of friendship. 10 years of shared secrets, late-night phone calls, and unwavering support through every crisis. If anyone could help Elena sort through her confused feelings, it was Jessica. They met at their usual spot, a small cafe near the university where they had spent countless hours studying together. Jessica was already waiting at their favorite booth, her blonde hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, her smile warm and welcoming. Look at you, Jessica said, standing to embrace her. You are absolutely glowing. Elena laughed. I feel like a whale. You look beautiful. How is the baby? They ordered salads and caught up on small talk. Jessica's job at the marketing firm, Elena's preparations for the nursery, the latest gossip about mutual friends from college. For a few minutes, Elena felt almost normal. Then Jessica leaned forward with concern in her eyes. But how are you really doing? You sounded stressed on the phone. Elena hesitated. The words felt dangerous, like admitting them out loud would make them real. I found a receipt in Derek's jacket last week, she finally said. For flowers. I never received any flowers. Jessica's expression flickered, something passing across her features too quickly for Elena to identify. But her voice remained steady. That is strange. Did you ask him about it? He said they were for a colleague's birthday. But Jessica, he comes home late almost every night now. He is always on his phone. He barely touches me anymore. Elena felt tears building behind her eyes. She hated how weak she sounded, how desperate. I think he is having an affair. Jessica reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Oh, honey, you are overthinking this. Derek adores you. He is probably just stressed about work. Men get weird when babies are coming. They freak out about responsibility. You think so? I know so. Jessica smiled reassuringly. You have the perfect marriage. Everyone says so. Do not let pregnancy hormones convince you otherwise. Elena wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that she was being paranoid, that her husband still loved her, that the life she had built was not crumbling beneath her feet. She had no idea that Jessica had already been paid $50,000 to keep her blind. After lunch, Elena drove to Sunrise Memory Care to visit her mother. Margaret Reynolds sat by the window of her private room, staring at the parking lot below with empty eyes. At 71 years old, she was disappearing piece by piece, her memories fragmenting like old photographs left too long in the sun. Most days, she did not recognize Elena at all. Hi, Mom, Elena said softly, pulling a chair beside her, and it is me. Elena. Margaret turned slowly. Her white hair was neatly brushed, courtesy of the attendants who cared for her around the clock. For a long moment, she simply stared at Elena with no recognition. Then something shifted. Elena, Margaret breathed. My sweet girl. Elena's heart leaped. You remember me today? Margaret's hands shot out and gripped Elena's wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes became urgent, almost frightened, clouded with a clarity that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Your father, Margaret said. You need to know about your father. Elena froze. Her biological father had always been a mystery. Margaret had adopted her when she was 3 years old, after Elena's birth mother died in a car accident. The story Elena had been told was simple. Her father was a nameless drifter who disappeared before she was born. There was nothing more to know. Mom, she said carefully, what about my father? Margaret struggled to form words, her mind fighting against the fog that constantly threatened to consume it. William, his name was William. He did not know. Your mother never told him. Elena felt the world tilt beneath her. Who is William? What do you mean he did not know? I kept his number, Margaret continued, her grip tightening. All these years, just in case you ever needed him, in case something happened. Sarah made me promise. Sarah was Elena's birth mother's name. Elena had seen photographs, had heard stories, but had never known her. Mom, Elena pressed. Who is William? Where is he? But Margaret's moment of clarity was already fading. A nurse entered with medication, interrupting the conversation with cheerful efficiency. By the time she left, Margaret was staring out the window again, her expression vacant. Who are you? Margaret asked when Elena tried to continue. Why are you in my room? Elena drove home in a daze. Who was William? Why had her mother hidden him? What other secrets had been buried in Margaret's deteriorating mind, waiting to surface at random moments before disappearing again? She did not tell Derek about the conversation. For the first time in their marriage, she kept a secret from him. That night, she wished she had kept more. Derek announced he would be working late, some emergency at the office that required his immediate attention. Elena kissed him goodbye and watched him drive away with a growing sense of unease she could not explain. At 10:30, unable to sleep, she reached for Derek's iPad on the nightstand. They had always shared passwords, maintained an open door policy about devices and accounts. Derek insisted on it. Transparency, he called it, the foundation of trust. The iPad glowed to life in her hands. She intended to read, to distract herself with articles about pregnancy or nursery decoration, but a text notification appeared at the top of the screen. Victoria, cannot wait to see you tonight. Wear the blue shirt I bought you. Elena's heart stopped. Her fingers moved without conscious direction, opening the message thread, scrolling backward through months of conversations she was never meant to see. Explicit photographs. I love you declarations. Plans for a future that did not include her. The woman named Victoria called Elena disgusting names. The whale, the obstacle, the paycheck. Derek responded with laughing emojis, with agreement, with cruel observations about his own wife that made Elena want to vomit. But the worst messages were dated just 3 days earlier. Derek had written, once the baby is born, I will file for divorce and full custody. Elena will not see it coming. Victoria had responded, perfect. Then we sell the house and take the kid for child support and start our life together. She will have nothing. Derek's reply, she deserves nothing. The iPad slipped from Elena's trembling hands. She had been married to a stranger. She had given up her career, her independence, her entire identity for a man who was planning to destroy her. And she had not seen any of it coming. Elena did not sleep that night. She sat in the darkness of her bedroom, her hands resting on her pregnant belly, and tried to understand how her life had collapsed without her noticing. 4 years of marriage. 4 years of believing Derek loved her. 4 years of building a future that had been a lie from the beginning. By morning, she had made a decision. She would confront Derek calmly and demand answers. She would protect herself and her baby. She would not let him see her break. She had no idea that the next 48 hours would break her completely. The morning sun cast long shadows across the bedroom as Elena dressed with trembling hands. She had rehearsed what she would say 100 times during the sleepless night, had imagined every possible scenario, and prepared for each one. She would be calm. She would be rational. She would demand the truth and then decide her next steps. She was 31 years old, 8 months pregnant, and her entire world had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. Derek had already left for work by the time she came downstairs. Elena made herself eat a piece of toast, knowing the baby needed nutrition even if she had no appetite. Then she climbed into her car and began the 30-minute drive to Derek's office in downtown Columbus. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel, home to Mitchell Real Estate Development. Derek was the regional sales director, though Elena had recently learned through those devastating text messages that the company was struggling financially. Another secret he had kept from her. She parked in the visitor lot and walked through the lobby with her head held high. The receptionist recognized her immediately. Mrs. Mitchell, the young woman smiled warmly. Mr. Mitchell did not mention you were coming. I wanted to surprise him, Elena said. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. She took the elevator to the 14th floor, her heart pounding harder with each ascending number. The doors opened onto a carpeted hallway lined with offices. She could hear phones ringing somewhere in the distance, the murmur of salespeople working their calls. Derek's corner office was at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. Elena approached slowly, her footsteps silent on the thick carpet. She could hear voices inside. Laughter. A woman's voice, low and teasing. She pushed the door open. Derek had Victoria pressed against his desk. His shirt was unbuttoned. Her skirt was hiked up around her thighs. They were so absorbed in each other that neither noticed Elena standing in the doorway until she spoke. "So it is true," she said. They sprang apart. Victoria recovered first, her expression shifting from surprise to amusement in the space of a heartbeat. She did not scramble to cover herself. She simply smoothed her skirt and smiled. "Oh, look," Victoria said. The wife finally figured it out. Derek was still fumbling with his buttons. His face had gone pale, then red, cycling through emotions too quickly to track. But when his eyes finally met Elena's, she saw no remorse there, only annoyance. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "You were supposed to stay home." Elena gripped the doorframe for support. Her legs felt weak. "I am your wife. I am 8 months pregnant with your child. And you are asking me what I am doing here?" Victoria slid off the desk and walked toward her with the confident stride of a woman who had already won. She was beautiful in a sharp, calculated way. Dark hair, red lips, eyes that glittered with intelligence and cruelty. "Let me handle this baby," Victoria said to Derek over her shoulder. She stopped directly in front of Elena, close enough that her perfume filled Elena's nostrils. "Elena, let us be adults about this. Derek does not love you. He never did. You were convenient, a stable income while he figured things out. But now," she tilted her head, "you are just in the way." Elena looked past her to Derek. "Say something. Tell me she is lying." Derek adjusted his tie. His face had settled into cold indifference. "She is not lying," he said. "I want a divorce. I have already talked to a lawyer." "You will be hearing from them." The words hit Elena like physical blows. She staggered backward, and as she did, a sharp pain seized her abdomen. A contraction, real and powerful and too early. "I am having contractions," she gasped. Victoria rolled her eyes. Drama queen. She is faking it for sympathy. Elena gripped her stomach as another wave of pain washed through her. This was not fake. Something was wrong. The stress, the shock, the betrayal. Her body was reacting in the most dangerous way possible. "Derek, please," she whispered. "I need to get to a hospital." "Fine," Derek said dismissively. "Go to the hospital. But do not expect me to come. I have things to handle here." He turned back to Victoria as if his pregnant wife was not clutching the doorframe in agony. Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her lips to his cheek, watching Elena over his shoulder with undisguised triumph. Elena stumbled out of the office and somehow made it to the elevator. The doors closed and she collapsed against the wall, sobbing, clutching her phone with fingers that could barely hold it. She called the only person she had left. "Jessica," she choked out when her friend answered. "I need help. Derek is cheating on me. I am having contractions. I need to get to the hospital." "Oh my God," Jessica said, her voice filled with a concern. "I am coming right now. Go straight to Mercy General. I will meet you there. Everything is going to be okay. I promise." Elena believed her. It was the last promise Jessica Palmer would ever keep. Mercy General Hospital loomed against the gray November sky, a sprawling complex of connected buildings that served most of Columbus's eastern suburbs. Elena managed to drive herself there, gripping the steering wheel through waves of pain that came every few minutes. The emergency room admitted her immediately. Her blood pressure was elevated. Her contractions were real but not yet regular. The baby was stressed but stable. Dr. Rebecca Morrison, Elena's obstetrician, arrived within the hour. She was a calm, competent woman in her mid-40s with graying temples and kind eyes. "Elena," she said gently, "your body is under tremendous stress. The contractions are a warning sign. I need you to stay here for observation." "Am I going to lose my baby?" "We are going to do everything possible to prevent that," Dr. Morrison said. "But you need to rest. You need to stay calm. Whatever happened today, you need to put it aside and focus on you and this child." Elena nodded numbly. She allowed the nurses to settle her into a private room, allowed them to connect monitors to her belly that tracked her baby's heartbeat with rhythmic beeping. The sound should have been comforting. Instead, each beat reminded her how fragile everything had become. Jessica arrived 2 hours later. She burst through the door with flowers in her arms and tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Elena," she cried, rushing to the bedside. "I am so sorry. I had no idea about Derek. He fooled everyone." Elena clung to her, sobbing against her shoulder. I do not know what to do. He is going to take everything. He is going to try to take my baby. Jessica stroked her hair. We will fight him. I will help you find a lawyer. You have your savings, right? Derek does not know about those. Elena nodded, her secret account. $400,000 she had saved before the marriage and kept in a separate bank under her maiden name. Derek had no idea it existed. It was her safety net, her insurance policy against disaster. Good, Jessica said. Text me the account details so I can help you transfer it somewhere safer. Derek might try to freeze your assets. Elena hesitated. The request seemed strange, premature. But this was Jessica, her best friend for 10 years. The woman who had held her hair when she was sick in college. The woman who had helped her pick her wedding dress. The woman who had never, not once, given her any reason to doubt her loyalty. Elena typed the information into a text message and handed over her phone. Jessica copied the details and smiled. Get some rest, Jessica said, squeezing her hand. I will make some calls. Everything is going to be okay. She stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. Elena tried to sleep. The medications the nurses had given her made her drowsy, pulling her toward unconsciousness. But something nagged at the edges of her awareness, some instinct she could not name. She got up to use the bathroom. The room swayed slightly as she crossed to the small, attached facility. On her way back, she glanced through the narrow window in the door and saw something that stopped her heart. Jessica was in the hallway talking to someone. Not a nurse, not a doctor. Victoria Lawson. They were not arguing. They were not surprised to see each other. They were conversing like old friends, like conspirators, like partners in a crime that had been planned long before today. Victoria handed Jessica a thick envelope. Jessica opened it, rifled through the contents, and nodded with satisfaction. Then she pulled out her phone, typed something, and showed the screen to Victoria. Victoria's smile was visible even through the small window. Perfect, Elena read on her lips. That is her account. All 400,000. Derek will be so happy. Elena's knees buckled. She grabbed the wall for support, barely making it back to her bed before her legs gave out completely. Her chest heaved with silent sobs. She pressed her fist against her mouth to keep from screaming. Jessica, her best friend, her sister in everything but blood, had been working with them the entire time. The door opened and Jessica walked back in, her expression arranged into gentle concern. You should be sleeping, she said. Elena forced herself to remain still, to keep her breathing even, to pretend she was not aware that the woman standing beside her bed had just stolen everything she had. I am trying, Elena whispered. Good. Jessica bent down and kissed her forehead. Sleep well, sweetie. Everything is going according to plan. She left. Elena checked her phone with trembling fingers. She navigated to her banking app, entered her credentials, and stared at the screen. Account balance, $0.00. $400,000. Transferred out 15 minutes ago. Gone. Elena had no husband, no savings, no best friend. She was 8 months pregnant, lying in a hospital bed, and utterly, completely alone. She sobbed into her pillow until she had no tears left. Then she lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, and tried to figure out how to survive. She decided that in the morning she would discharge herself. She would go to a women's shelter. She would start over with nothing. She had no way of knowing that the worst was still to come. Evening settled over Mercy General Hospital like a shroud. Elena lay in her bed, staring at the monitors that tracked her baby's heartbeat. The contractions had slowed. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. If she could remain calm and rest for the next few days, there was a good chance she could carry the baby to term. Remaining calm felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jessica's face. The smile that had hidden 10 years of treachery. The hand that had squeezed hers while orchestrating her destruction. The casual cruelty of taking everything and calling it a plan. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Mitchell, your husband is here. He says there is urgent paperwork you need to sign for your insurance. Elena's blood went cold. I do not want to see him. The nurse looked uncomfortable. I understand, but he says if you do not sign tonight, your coverage for the delivery will be voided. Hospital policy requires a family member's signature for the extended monitoring. I do not have any other family. I am sorry, the nurse said gently. I can stay nearby if you want, but you really do need to sign these forms. Elena closed her eyes. Margaret could not sign legal documents. Her dementia had progressed too far for any court to accept her capacity. There was literally no one else. Fine, she said, but please stay close. At the nurse's station, where you can hear me if I need you. Of course. Derek entered the room a few minutes later. He looked different than he had at the office. Softer somehow. Tired. His shoulders slumped and his eyes held something that might have been regret. Elena, he said, sitting in the chair beside her bed, I am sorry about today. I was cruel. Seeing you in pain, it made me realize how badly I have messed up. Elena did not respond. She watched him the way a mouse watches a cat, waiting for the trap to spring. Can we talk? Derek continued. Just for a minute? Not here, the nurses keep interrupting. There is a family consultation room down the hall. It is private. Please, 5 minutes. Every instinct screamed at Elena to refuse. But she needed those insurance papers. She needed coverage for the delivery, for the baby, for whatever came next. And the consultation room was only steps away. The nurse's station was right there. If anything happened, she could scream. 5 minutes, she said. That is it. Derek helped her out of bed with exaggerated gentleness. They walked slowly down the hallway, Elena's hand pressed against her belly, Derek hovering solicitously at her elbow. To anyone watching, they might have looked like a concerned husband caring for his pregnant wife. The consultation room was at the far end of the corridor, past the last patient room, around a corner. More private than Elena had expected, more isolated than she had realized. Derek opened the door and gestured for her to enter. Victoria was waiting inside. Elena tried to turn around, but Derek's hand closed around her arm. He pulled her into the room and shut the door behind them with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Hello again, Elena, Victoria said. I hear you have had a rough day. Lost your husband, lost your money, lost your best friend. Let me out, Elena demanded. I will scream. Victoria shrugged. Go ahead. But first, look at this. She held up her phone. On the screen was a video. Elena recognized herself immediately, recognized the bedroom. But the man in the video was a stranger. The acts depicted were things she had never done. Amazing what technology can do, Victoria said conversationally. This is our insurance policy. If you try to fight the divorce, if you try to claim Derek was unfaithful, this video goes everywhere. Your family, your employers, the internet. That is fake, Elena said. Anyone can see it is fake. Derek stepped closer. Does not matter if it is fake. People believe what they want to believe. And you know what they will believe? That the baby is not mine. Lena's hand moved protectively to her stomach. The baby is yours. You know that, do I? Derek's face twisted with sudden rage. Victoria showed me things. Messages you sent to other men. Pictures. Those are lies, Elena cried. I never sent anything to anyone. I have been faithful to you for 4 years. Derek grabbed her shoulders. His fingers dug into her flesh with bruising force. Shut up, he snarled. Victoria laughed. The sound was high and delighted, like a child watching a particularly entertaining show. Hit her, Derek, Victoria encouraged. She deserves it. She has been lying to you for years. Elena tried to pull away. Derek, please, I'm pregnant. The baby. His fist connected with her face. The pain was beyond anything Elena had ever experienced. It exploded through her skull, radiating outward in waves of agony. She felt her nose break, felt blood pour from her nostrils, felt herself falling. She hit the floor hard. Her hands flew to her belly as Derek's shoe connected with her side. She screamed. He kicked her again. Victoria kept laughing. Not so perfect now, are you? Derek kicked her stomach. Something tore inside Elena. She felt it give way, felt the rush of fluid, felt pain like a knife twisting in her abdomen. Blood began spreading beneath her hospital gown. Too much blood, far too much blood. She screamed again, louder this time, and again, and again. Finally, blessedly, she heard shouting in the hallway, running footsteps, alarms. The door burst open. Nurses flooded in. They surrounded Elena, checking her vitals, shouting medical terminology she could not understand. She is hemorrhaging, someone yelled. The baby's heart rate is dropping. We need the OR now. Call Dr. Morrison. Tell her it is an emergency. Elena was lifted onto a gurney. The ceiling tiles blurred above her. She heard more voices, more alarms, more panic. But through it all, she watched Derek and Victoria walk calmly toward the exit. Victoria looked back and waved. Then everything went dark. The call came to William Ashford's penthouse office at 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time. He was reviewing contracts for his latest development project, a mixed-use complex in Manhattan that would add another $100 million to his already substantial fortune. At 63 years old, William had built Ashford Industries from nothing into one of the largest construction and real estate empires on the East Coast. He had started as a carpenter's apprentice in Cleveland. Now he owned buildings in 12 states. The phone number was unfamiliar. An Ohio area code. Something made him answer. "Hello?" A frail voice crackled through the speaker. William, is that you? It is Margaret. Margaret Reynolds." William's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. He had not heard that name in 30 years. Margaret Reynolds had been his girlfriend's best friend back when he was nobody, when he was working construction during the day and taking business classes at night, when he had fallen desperately in love with a woman named Sarah, who had disappeared one day without explanation. "Margaret," he set down the cup. "What is wrong?" "Who is Elena, your daughter William?" The voice trembled with urgency and confusion. "Elena is your daughter. Sarah never told you. She was pregnant when she left. I have been raising her since Sarah died. Please, she is in danger." The hospital. The line went dead. William sat frozen at his desk. His heart hammered against his ribs. His mind raced through implications, impossibilities, the sudden restructuring of his entire understanding of the past 3 decades. He had a daughter. He had a 31-year-old daughter he had never known existed. His girlfriend had not abandoned him. She had left because she was pregnant and too proud to ask for help from a man who had nothing. And now that daughter was in danger. William picked up another phone and dialed his personal assistant. "Get my jet ready," he said. "I am flying to Ohio tonight. And find everything you can about a woman named Elena Carter, maiden name Reynolds, currently at a hospital in Columbus." "Yes, sir." There was a pause. "Is everything all right?" "I do not know," William said, "but I am going to find out." 4 hours later, William's private jet touched down at a regional airport outside Columbus. A black SUV was waiting on the tarmac. His security team had worked through the flight, gathering information. Elena Carter, 31 years old, married to Derek Mitchell, regional sales director at a struggling real estate company. Currently in emergency surgery at Mercy General Hospital following an assault. Husband was a person of interest. Police were on scene. William had not slept. He had spent the flight staring out the window at the darkness below, thinking about all the moments he had missed. First steps, first words, graduations and birthdays, and every milestone that marked a child's journey into adulthood. 31 years of a life he should have been part of. Gone because Sarah had not trusted him to be worthy. He would prove worthy now. The SUV pulled up to the hospital at 2 in the morning. William ignored the security guard's protests and strode toward the emergency wing with the authority of a man who had commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals and never once accepted no as an answer. A nurse tried to stop him. "Sir, only family members are allowed. I am her father," William said. His voice was granite, unbreakable. "Take me to her. Now." Something in his tone made the nurse comply. She led him through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear, past rooms where other families waited with other tragedies, until they reached the surgical wing. Through a window, William could see Elena for the first time. She lay unconscious on an operating table, pale, bruised, broken. Doctors moved around her with urgent efficiency. Monitors beeped with the rhythm of 2 hearts, one weak and struggling, one tiny and fighting for survival. William pressed his hand against the glass. "Come on," he whispered. "Fight. I just found you. Do not leave me now." The surgery lasted 2 hours. William did not move, did not eat, did not sit. He stood at that window like a sentinel, watching strangers fight to save the daughter he had never known he had. At 4:47 in the morning, a thin cry pierced the air. The baby, a boy, alive. The surgeon looked up and gave a thumbs up through the window. Lena's heart rate stabilized. The monitor shifted from alarming red to cautiously optimistic green. William collapsed against the wall. For the first time in 40 years, the billionaire who had built an empire from nothing broke down and wept. Consciousness returned to Elena slowly, like surfacing from deep water. She became aware of pain first. Her face throbbed. Her abdomen ached. Every breath hurt. But beneath the pain was something else. A lightness. An absence. Her baby. Elena's eyes flew open. She tried to sit up, but hands pressed gently against her shoulders. Easy, a voice said. You have been through a lot. She blinked, trying to focus. The room was dim. Soft afternoon light filtered through closed blinds. Medical equipment surrounded the bed, beeping and humming with reassuring regularity. And sitting in the chair beside her was a man she had never seen before. He was in his early 60s, with silver hair and a strong jaw, and eyes that looked somehow familiar. Like looking into a mirror that showed a different time, a different face, but something recognizably the same beneath the surface. "Who are you?" Elena whispered. The man leaned forward. His hands were clasped in front of him, his expression a mixture of hope and terror and overwhelming emotion. "Elena," he said, "my name is William Ashford. I am your father." The words did not make sense. Elena tried to process them, tried to fit them into her understanding of reality, but they remained foreign, impossible. "I do not have a father," she said. "Your mother never told me about you," William continued. His voice was steady, but Elena could see the effort it took to maintain that steadiness. "She disappeared before I knew she was pregnant. Margaret kept the secret all these years. She called me 2 nights ago. She saved your life." Margaret. The phone number she had kept for 30 years. The moment of clarity at the memory care facility. Your father. His name was William. Elena started to cry. Everything hurt. Her body, her heart, her entire understanding of who she was and where she came from. She had spent 31 years believing she was alone in the world, that her father was a nameless drifter who had abandoned her before she was born. And now this stranger was sitting beside her bed, claiming to be the missing piece she had never known she was looking for. "I do not understand," she sobbed. "I know," William said. "I know you do not understand. I do not fully understand it myself. But we have time now. We have time to figure it out together." The door opened. A nurse entered carrying a small bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. Her face was warm with professional joy. "Mrs. Carter, would you like to hold your son?" Elena's breath caught. She had been so focused on the pain, so overwhelmed by the impossible information about her father, that she had not fully processed the most important fact of all. Her baby was alive. The nurse placed the bundle in Elena's arms. She looked down at the tiny face, the closed eyes, the miniature fingers curled into fists. He was perfect. He was real. He was here. She sobbed harder, but these were different tears. Tears of relief, of gratitude so profound it felt like it might swallow her whole. William watched them, his own eyes wet. His family, the family he never knew he had. "What will you name him?" he asked. Elena looked at the man who had appeared from nowhere to save her. The father she had spent a lifetime searching for without knowing she was searching. The grandfather her son was lucky enough to have. "William," she said. "His name is William. After the grandfather he is lucky to have." William broke down completely. The billionaire, the empire builder, the man who had faced hostile takeovers and economic collapses without flinching, wept openly at his daughter's bedside. "I am never leaving you again," he said. "Either of you, I'm here now, forever." Lena reached out and took his hand. For the first time in her life, she had a father. Over the next few days, Elena learned the full extent of what had happened while she lay unconscious. Derek and Victoria had been arrested at the hospital, caught on security cameras committing the assault. Detective Frank Cooper, a veteran officer with 3 daughters of his own, had taken personal interest in the case. The footage was damning. Derek's hands covered in Elena's blood, Victoria laughing in the background, the sounds of Elena's screams captured on audio. Jessica had been arrested at her apartment the following morning. Still in possession of the envelope of cash Victoria had paid her, she had tried to claim innocence, had insisted she was coerced, but her text messages told a different story. 6 months of coordination with Victoria, plans and payments and betrayals documented in black and white. The $400,000 had been frozen before it could be transferred out of the country. William's forensic accountants traced the transactions within hours and worked with law enforcement to ensure the money was recovered. But the legal matters felt distant to Elena. What consumed her attention was the tiny person who depended on her for everything. Baby William, whom the nurses had started calling Little Will, had been born 6 weeks premature. He spent his first week in the NICU, connected to monitors and feeding tubes and oxygen support. Elena sat beside his incubator for hours every day, talking to him, singing to him, willing him to grow stronger with every breath. William Sr. was there too. He hired additional specialists. He ensured little Will received the best possible care. He sat vigil beside Elena, keeping her company during the long hours, bringing her food she did not want to eat, making sure she remembered to take care of herself as well as her son. They talked during those quiet hours. Elena learned about her mother, Sarah Reynolds, who had been William's girlfriend for 2 years before she disappeared. She learned that William had searched for her, had hired private investigators, had spent months trying to understand why she had left without a word. "I loved her," William said one night, his voice heavy with decades-old grief. "I would have married her. I would have given up everything to build a life with her. But she never gave me the chance." "Why did she leave?" Elena asked. "I do not know for certain. But Margaret told me that Sarah found out she was pregnant right around the time I landed my first big contract. I was suddenly making real money. I was moving up in the world. And Sarah?" William paused. "Sarah was proud, fiercely proud. She did not want anyone to think she was using me. She did not want to be a burden. So she disappeared. So she disappeared. And she took my daughter with her." Elena processed this information slowly, turning it over in her mind like a stone worn smooth by years of examination. Her mother had loved her, had sacrificed everything to raise her independently, had died in a car accident when Elena was 3, leaving her in Margaret's care. "Margaret never told you," Elena said. "All those years, she never reached out. She said she thought about it many times," William replied. "But your mother made her promise, and Margaret keeps her promises." Elena looked down at little Will, sleeping peacefully in his incubator. "I wish I could have known her," she whispered. William took her hand. "You are so much like her. The determination, the strength, the stubbornness." He smiled through his tears. "She would be so proud of you." After 2 weeks, little Will was strong enough to leave the NICU. Elena held him in her arms as a nurse wheeled her toward the hospital exit, and the feeling of finally bringing her son into the world overwhelmed her with emotion. William was waiting outside with a car service. He had made arrangements for Elena and the baby to stay at his estate outside Cleveland, a mansion that seemed excessive and unnecessary, but was also safe and secure and far from anyone who might want to hurt them. "You do not have to do this," Elena said as the car pulled away from the hospital. "I know," William replied. "I want to." She looked at him, this stranger who was her father, and felt something she had not felt in years: hope. The estate was beautiful in a way Elena had never experienced. Rolling lawns, manicured gardens, a house that looked like something from a magazine, all stone and glass and architectural precision. But it was not the luxury that struck her. It was the quiet. After weeks of hospital noise, of beeping monitors and hushed conversations and the constant hum of medical activity, the silence felt like a gift. A nursery had been prepared, pale blue walls, a crib that probably cost more than Elena's car, stuffed animals in mobiles, and a rocking chair positioned by the window to catch the afternoon light. "This is too much," Elena said. "It is not nearly enough," William replied. "I have 31 years to make up for." In the weeks that followed, Elena began to heal. Her body recovered first. The bruises faded. The surgical incisions closed. The physical evidence of Derek's violence disappeared beneath fresh skin and careful nutrition. Her mind took longer. She started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Catherine Price, who specialized in trauma and domestic abuse. They talked about the assault, about Jessica's betrayal, about the years of manipulation that had preceded that horrible night. "Abuse is not always obvious," Price told her during one session. "It can be subtle, gradual. It can look like concern or love or protection until suddenly you realize you have lost yourself entirely." "I kept thinking it was my fault," Elena admitted. "That if I had been a better wife, he would not have cheated. That if I had noticed sooner, I could have stopped it. The only person responsible for Derek's choices is Derek." Dr. Price said firmly. You are not to blame for his violence. You are not to blame for his deception. You are not to blame for any of it. Elena wanted to believe her. Some days she almost did. Little Will grew stronger every day. He started sleeping through the night at 6 weeks old. He smiled for the first time at 8 weeks. He laughed at 10 weeks, a sound so pure and joyful that Elena cried every time she heard it. William Sr. was transformed by his grandson. The businessman who commanded meetings and negotiated contracts became soft and silly in the nursery. He made ridiculous faces. He sang off-key lullabies. He held the baby for hours while Elena rested, murmuring promises about all the things they would do together. I'm going to teach you to fish, William told the baby one afternoon, and to play chess, and to throw a baseball. All the things I never got to teach your mother. Elena watched from the doorway, her heart full. She had lost so much, her husband, her savings, her best friend, but she had found something she never knew she was missing. A father, a family, a future, and soon she would have justice too. The day Elena confronted Victoria Lawson, she wore a simple black dress and no makeup to cover her fading bruises. It had been 6 weeks since the attack. Victoria had been held without bail, deemed a flight risk due to her history of fraud in other states under different names. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Security footage, text messages, financial records. The deepfake video traced back to her personal laptop. She was going to prison for a very long time. But Elena needed something more than legal justice. She needed to look the woman who had tried to destroy her in the eye and say what needed to be said. William had arranged for a private meeting at the detention center. His lawyers had negotiated the terms. 5 minutes in an interview room with guards stationed outside. Are you sure about this? William asked as they drove through the gray November morning. Yes, Elena said. I need closure. The detention center was a squat building surrounded by chain-link fences and razor wire. Elena walked through metal detectors and security checkpoints with her head held high. The guards treated her with surprising gentleness. They had seen the footage. They knew what Victoria had done. The interview room was small and sterile. A metal table, 2 chairs, a camera mounted in the corner to record everything. Victoria was already waiting when Elena entered. She looked different in the orange jumpsuit, smaller somehow. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by prison-issue garments and bare skin. But her eyes were the same, cold, calculating, unrepentant. Come to gloat? Victoria asked. How predictable. Elena sat across from her. The table between them felt like insufficient protection, but the guards were right outside. Victoria could not hurt her again. I want you to understand something, Elena said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this speech 100 times. You spent 18 months planning to destroy me. 18 months manipulating my husband, buying my best friend, plotting to steal my baby and my inheritance. Victoria smirked, and I almost succeeded. Almost. Elena leaned forward slightly. But here is what you did not count on. You were so focused on what I might inherit that you forgot what I actually am. I am a financial analyst. I spent years finding fraud patterns in corporate accounts. You think I did not notice the small things? The way Jessica suddenly had new jewelry? The way Derek's lies did not quite line up? I knew something was wrong. I just did not know how deep it went. The smirk faltered slightly on Victoria's face. But that is not why I am here, Elena continued. I am here because I want you to understand what you are losing. Not just your freedom. You will have plenty of time to think about that. But everything else, Elena paused, letting the words hang in the air. Derek never loved you. You know that, right? He was using you just like you were using him. The difference is you actually fell for him. I have seen the way you looked at him in those text messages. You thought once I was gone, he would be yours. But Derek does not belong to anyone except his addictions. Shut up, Victoria snapped. The money you were so desperate to steal? My father is worth $4 billion. $4 billion. The 400,000 you and Jessica took? That is pocket change. It has already been recovered. Jessica has already been arrested. Everything you worked for, everything you planned, everything you sacrificed, all of it was for nothing. Victoria's composure was cracking now, her jaw tightened. her hands clenched into fists on the table. And the worst part? Elena asked. The thing that will eat at you every day in that cell? She stood up. I am going to forget you. Within a year, I will not think about you at all. I will be raising my son in a home filled with love. I will be reconnecting with the father I never knew. I will be building a life so beautiful that your 18 months of scheming will be nothing but a footnote. You wanted to take everything from me. Instead, you gave me everything. If you had not pushed Derek to show his true colors, I might have spent 20 more years in that marriage. So thank you, Victoria. Thank you for setting me free. Elena turned and walked toward the door. Behind her, Victoria exploded. She screamed curses. She slammed her fists against the table. She thrashed in her chair until guards rushed in to restrain her. But Elena did not look back. She walked out of the detention center and into the gray November light, and she felt something she had not felt in months. Free. 2 days later, she confronted Jessica. The meeting was harder to arrange. Jessica had been cooperative with investigators, had provided testimony against Victoria in exchange for reduced charges. But she had also asked to see Elena, to explain, to apologize. William advised against it. Dr. Price suggested she was not ready. But Elena knew she needed to hear what Jessica had to say. They met in the same interview room, under the same fluorescent lights. Jessica looked worse than Victoria had. Her hair was unwashed. Her face was hollow. Her eyes were red from crying that seemed to have no end. Elena, she said, her voice cracking. I am so sorry. I never meant for any of this. Yes, you did. Elena's voice was flat. You meant every bit of it. Do not insult me by pretending otherwise. Jessica broke down. I was jealous. I have always been jealous. You had the career, the husband, the baby on the way. Everything came so easy for you. Easy? Elena felt something hot and sharp rise in her chest. You think my life was easy? I gave up my career for a man who was cheating on me. I was isolated, manipulated, made to feel like nothing. And you, my best friend, you saw all of that and decided to help them destroy me. Victoria offered me $150,000, Jessica whispered. I have student loans, credit card debt. I was drowning. Do not make this about money. You had 100 chances to tell me the truth. Every time we had lunch, every phone call, you chose to lie. You chose to betray me, and you enjoyed it. Jessica had no response. The tears kept falling, but Elena felt no sympathy. I hope the money was worth it, Jessica, because you did not just lose a friend. You lost everything. And you will have years in prison to think about why. Elena left without saying goodbye. Jessica's sobs followed her down the hallway, but Elena did not feel guilty. She felt free. The trial came 3 months later. By then, little Will was 4 months old and thriving. He had his father's dark hair, but his mother's eyes, and he smiled every time Elena held him. She had stopped thinking of him as Derek's son. He was hers and William Sr.'s. The family they had built from the ashes of betrayal. The courtroom was packed on the day of sentencing. Reporters filled the gallery. Victims' advocates sat in the front row. Detective Cooper, who had worked the case from the beginning, watched from the back with quiet satisfaction. Derek Mitchell looked like a shadow of the man Elena had married. Prison had not been kind to him. His gambling debts had caught up with him behind bars, and the threats from other inmates had left him gaunt and hollow-eyed. The charming smile was gone. The confidence was gone. Everything that had made him seem powerful had been stripped away. The charges were read aloud. Aggravated assault against a pregnant woman. Attempted murder due to the severity of Elena's injuries. Insurance fraud. Conspiracy to commit theft. Each charge felt like a weight lifting from Elena's shoulders. Then it was her turn to speak. She walked to the podium and faced the judge. Her hands were steady. Her voice did not waver. Your Honor, she began, the defendant was supposed to be my partner, my protector, the father of my child. Instead, he beat me while I was 8 months pregnant. He kicked me in the stomach, trying to kill our unborn son. He laughed while his mistress cheered him on. She paused to let the words settle. I do not ask the court for vengeance. I ask for justice. I ask that Derek Mitchell never have the opportunity to do to another woman what he did to me. I ask that my son grow up in a world where men like Derek face consequences. And I ask that when Derek sits in his cell for the next 2 decades, he remembers that he had a family. He had a wife who loved him. He had a son who would have looked up to him, and he destroyed it all for a woman who was using him. She returned to her seat beside William. The verdicts were swift, guilty on all counts. The sentences were satisfying. Derek Mitchell received 23 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 18 years. Victoria Lawson received 18 years for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to attempted murder. Jessica Palmer received 5 years for theft and conspiracy. As Derek was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Elena one last time. "Elena," he said, "please, I am sorry." She did not acknowledge him. She turned to her father, who put his arm around her. "It is over," William said. "Yes," Elena replied, "it is." 6 months after the trial, Margaret Reynolds took a turn for the worse. Elena had visited her every week since leaving the hospital. Sometimes Margaret recognized her. Sometimes she did not. But even on the bad days, Elena sat beside her bed and held her hand and told her about little Will's latest accomplishments. "He is crawling now," Elena said during one visit. "He gets into everything. Your house would have been chaos." Margaret had smiled faintly, not quite comprehending, but somehow comforted by the sound of Elena's voice. But the dementia was relentless. It stole more pieces of Margaret with each passing month. The staff at Sunrise Memory Care called Elena on a Thursday morning to tell her the end was near. She and William drove together to the facility. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of snow. Little Will stayed home with the nanny William had hired, safe and warm, and unaware of the grief that was coming. Margaret's room was quiet. The monitors had been disconnected. The medical interventions had stopped. There was nothing left to do but wait. Elena sat on one side of the bed. William sat on the other. They held Margaret's hands and watched her breathe, each exhale seeming fainter than the last. "Thank you," William said softly, "for everything, for raising my daughter when I could not, for keeping my number all those years, for making that phone call." Margaret's eyes fluttered. For a moment, impossibly, she seemed lucid. "William," she breathed, "you came." "I came," he said, "because of you." Margaret's gaze shifted to Elena. "My sweet girl, I'm sorry I kept secrets." Elena leaned closer, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life, Mom. You always protected me. There is nothing to forgive." Margaret looked between them, father and daughter, finally together after 31 years. "Family," she whispered. Finally. Her eyes closed. She did not open them again. Elena wept. William wept. They held hands across Margaret's body, two strangers connected by the woman who had loved them both. The funeral was small and private. Elena had not known many of Margaret's friends. The dementia had isolated her in her final years, had separated her from the community she had once been part of. But the people who came spoke warmly of the woman they remembered. A kindergarten teacher for 30 years, a volunteer at the food bank every Thanksgiving, a guardian who had taken in a 3-year-old orphan and raised her as her own. Little Will attended in Elena's arms, too young to understand but present nonetheless. He was Margaret's legacy as much as Elena was. Another generation of the family Margaret had worked so hard to protect. William gave the eulogy. Margaret Reynolds was not famous, he said. She did not build companies or change the world in ways that make headlines. But she did something more important. She kept a promise. For 30 years, she kept a secret that was not hers to tell because she had given her word to a friend. And when the time came, she found the courage to break that promise because keeping it would have meant watching her daughter die. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I never got to thank her properly. I never got to tell her what her phone call meant to me. But I can honor her memory by being the father Elena deserves, by being the grandfather little Will needs, by keeping the family together that Margaret worked so hard to create." After the service, Elena stood alone by Margaret's grave. The headstone was simple. Margaret Ann Reynolds, beloved mother and guardian. She kept families together. "Thank you, Mom," Elena whispered, "for everything, for keeping his number, for making that call, for giving me a family when I had nothing." She placed flowers on the fresh earth and stood in silence as snow began to fall. William found her there an hour later, shivering in the cold but unwilling to leave. "She is at peace now," he said gently. "I know." Elena wiped her eyes. I just miss her. You always will. William put his arm around her. That is what love does. It stays with us even after the people are gone. They walked back to the car together, leaving Margaret to her rest. In the months that followed, Elena began to build a new life. She moved out of William's estate and into a home of her own, a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood where little Will could grow up safe and loved. William protested at first. He wanted her close, wanted to make up for lost time, wanted to be part of every milestone. But Elena needed her independence. She needed to know she could stand on her own before she could truly accept help. I am not leaving, she assured him. I will bring little Will every weekend. You can visit whenever you want, but I need to prove to myself that I can do this. William understood. He had built his own empire from nothing. He knew the value of independence. Elena started working again. Not at her old company, but as a consultant for a nonprofit that helped domestic abuse survivors with financial planning. The work was meaningful in a way her previous career had never been. She helped women understand their options. She helped them hide money from abusive partners. She helped them build escape plans. Every success felt like a victory. Little Will celebrated his first birthday on a sunny afternoon in May. William's estate was transformed with balloons and streamers. Elena invited colleagues from the nonprofit, neighbors from her new street, a few survivors she had helped who had become friends. She stood in the garden watching her son toddle across the grass, chasing bubbles that one of the other children was blowing. He fell down, picked himself up, and kept going. Determination in every unsteady step. He is going to be a remarkable person, William said, appearing beside her. He already is. William handed her a glass of champagne. To family. Elena clinked her glass against his. To family. They watched little Will together, grandfather and mother united by the child who represented everything they had almost lost. Do you ever regret not knowing me sooner? Elena asked. William considered the question carefully. Every day, he admitted, I think about all the moments I missed. Your first steps, your graduation, your wedding, even though that marriage was a mistake. I will never get those years back, and that loss will always hurt. He paused, but I do not believe in wasting time on regret. I found you when you needed me most. And now every day I have with you, and this little one is a gift I never expected to receive. Elena rested her head on his shoulder. I spent my whole life feeling like I did not belong anywhere, she said. Like I was waiting for something without knowing what. And now I know. I was waiting for you. You belong here, William replied. You and little Will. This is your home. Forever. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Little Will ran towards them with his arms outstretched, laughing with pure joy. Elena caught him and swung him into the air. Happy birthday, my perfect boy, she whispered against his hair. For the first time in her life, everything felt right. The notification appeared on Elena's phone on an ordinary Tuesday morning. She was making breakfast in her kitchen, scrambling eggs while little Will banged a wooden spoon against his high chair tray. The sun streamed through the windows. Coffee percolated on the counter. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, expecting a message from William or a reminder about her afternoon appointment. Instead, she saw a news alert. Derek Mitchell found dead in prison cell. Apparent suicide. Elena stood frozen with a spatula in her hand. She read the headline again and again. The words remained the same. Derek was dead. The man who had beaten her. The man who had kicked her pregnant belly. The man who had tried to destroy her and her child. He was gone. Elena waited to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, grief for the man she had once loved. Anything, but there was nothing. Just the quiet acknowledgement that a chapter was truly completely closed. She turned off the stove, removed little Will from his high chair, and called her father. I just saw the news, William said when he answered. Are you all right? I think so, Elena replied. I thought I would feel something. Relief, anger, something. But I do not. That is okay. You do not have to feel anything. He spent his whole life trying to matter, Elena said slowly, trying to be important, trying to control everyone around him, and in the end, his death is just a notification I am going to delete. She looked at the phone in her hand. Is that wrong, she asked? To feel nothing? No, William's voice was gentle. It means he does not have power over you anymore. It means you are free. Elena deleted the notification. She returned to making breakfast. She fed little Will his eggs and toast. She cleaned the kitchen and started a load of laundry and went about her day as if nothing had happened. Because for her, nothing had happened. Derek Mitchell was already dead to her. He had been dead since the moment he swung his fist at her face. The official news was just a formality. That evening, after little Will was asleep, Elena poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her back porch watching the stars emerge. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, the woman who had given up her career for a man who never loved her, the woman who had trusted her best friend with her darkest secrets, the woman who had believed that love meant sacrifice, that marriage meant submission, that being good was enough to earn happiness. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had survived the unsurvivable, someone who had built a new life from the ashes of betrayal and emerged more powerful than before. Elena raised her glass to the empty night. "To the woman I was," she said softly, "and to the woman I have become." She drank deeply and felt the wine warm her throat. Tomorrow she would visit Margaret's grave. She would tell her mother about Derek's death, even though Margaret would not hear. She would bring flowers and spend an hour in quiet conversation, the way she did every week. The next day she would take little Will to see his grandfather. They would have lunch in the garden. William would make ridiculous faces to make the baby laugh. Elena would roll her eyes and pretend to be annoyed and feel her heart swell with love. The day after that, she would go to work. She would help another woman escape an abusive relationship. She would use her own experience to guide someone else toward freedom. She would make meaning from her pain. And life would continue, not perfectly, not without difficulty, but forward, always forward. Elena finished her wine and went inside. She checked on little Will, smoothing his hair back from his forehead, marveling at the miracle of his existence. "Good night, my perfect boy," she whispered. "Mommy loves you." She went to her own bed and fell asleep within minutes. No nightmares, no sudden jolts awake, just peaceful rest and the quiet knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The morning of little Will's second birthday dawned bright and clear. Elena woke early, before her alarm, filled with an energy that surprised her. 2 years since the worst day of her life. 2 years since the attack that nearly killed her and her son. 2 years since she had learned the truth about Derek and Victoria and Jessica. 2 years of healing. She showered and dressed and prepared breakfast while little Will slept. The house was quiet except for the sound of birds outside the window and the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Peace had become normal. Safety had become expected. The constant vigilance of her marriage years had faded, replaced by a calm she had not known was possible. When little Will woke, she carried him downstairs and set him in his high chair. "Happy birthday, sweet boy," she said, kissing his forehead. 2 years old today, he grinned at her, showing all his baby teeth. 2, he repeated proudly. He had been talking for months now, simple words and phrases that filled Elena with joy every time she heard them. The party would be that afternoon at William's estate. Elena had invited the same mix of people as the year before. Colleagues, neighbors, survivor friends, the community she had built from scratch after losing everything. But before the party, there was something she needed to do. She strapped little Will into his car seat and drove to the cemetery. Margaret's grave was neat and well tended. Elena paid for a maintenance service to keep the grass trimmed and the flowers fresh. It was the least she could do for the woman who had given her everything. She lifted little Will from the car and carried him to the headstone. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I brought someone to see you." Little Will squirmed in her arms, fascinated by a butterfly that fluttered past. "He is 2 today," Elena continued. 2 years old. He is walking and talking and getting into everything. You would love him so much." She sat on the grass beside the grave, settling little Will in her lap. "Derek died," she said. "I am sure you already know somehow. I do not feel anything about it. Is that strange? You always told me to feel my feelings, not to bottle them up. But when I heard he was gone, I just felt empty. Not mad, not happy, just empty." She paused, watching the butterfly dance among the flowers. "William is wonderful. He spoils little Will terribly, but I do not have the heart to stop him. He missed so many years. I think he is trying to make up for all of them at once. Little Will grabbed a fistful of grass and offered it to Elena with a proud smile. Thank you, baby, she laughed. That is beautiful. She turned back to the headstone. I am doing well, Mom, really well. I never thought I would be able to say that. After everything that happened, I thought I was broken forever. But I am not. I am stronger than I was before. And I have you to thank for that. She stood, brushing grass from her pants. I love you, Mom. I will always love you. Thank you for saving me. She carried little Will back to the car and drove toward William's estate. The party was exactly what she needed. William had outdone himself with decorations, balloons in every color imaginable, a bounce house on the lawn, a petting zoo with miniature ponies and baby goats that made little Will shriek with delight. You are spoiling him, Elena said as William handed her a glass of champagne. That is what grandfathers do, William replied without apology. She watched her son chase a baby goat across the grass, his laughter ringing through the air like music. I never thought I would have this, she said quietly. A family. A real family. Growing up, it was always just me and Margaret. I thought that was all I would ever have. And then Derek, and I thought I had found my person, my partner for life. But it was all a lie. She turned to William. And then you came. Out of nowhere. This father I never knew existed. And suddenly I had more family than I knew what to do with. William's eyes were wet. I wish I had known sooner. I wish your mother had told me. I know. But maybe this was how it was supposed to be. Maybe I needed to go through everything I went through to become the person I am now, to appreciate what I have. Or maybe, William suggested gently, sometimes bad things just happen to good people, and there is no meaning to find. Only survival, and you survived. Elena considered this. I like your version better, she admitted. It is less pressure than finding meaning in trauma. You do not have to find meaning. You just have to keep moving forward. Little Will came running toward one of them, his face smeared with frosting from a cupcake someone had given him. Mama, he shouted. Pop, pop, look! He held up a fistful of dandelions, crushed and wilted but offered with absolute pride. Elena crouched down and accepted the flowers with exaggerated enthusiasm. They are beautiful, she said. The most beautiful flowers I have ever seen. Little Will beamed. William swept him up into his arms and spun him around until they were both dizzy. Elena watched them, her heart so full it ached. This was her family. Imperfect and unexpected and more precious than anything she had ever imagined. This was her life, and it was good. 3 years after the attack, Elena stood at a podium in a conference room filled with domestic violence advocates, law enforcement officers, and survivors. She was the keynote speaker at the annual summit for survivors of intimate partner violence, an honor she had never imagined receiving, a platform she had never thought she would have. Thank you for having me, she began, her voice steady and clear. I'm going to tell you my story, not because it is unique, but because it is not. Because every person in this room knows someone who has lived through something similar. Because silence is the accomplice of abuse, and I refuse to be silent anymore. She told them everything. The slow erosion of her independence during her marriage, the gaslighting that made her doubt her own perceptions, the affair she had suspected but been afraid to confirm, the betrayal by her best friend, the attack that nearly killed her and her unborn son, and the father who had appeared from nowhere to save her. People think surviving abuse is about physical strength, she said. It is not. It is about refusing to accept the narrative your abuser has created. It is about remembering who you were before they tried to destroy you. It is about building a new life when everything you knew has been taken away. She paused, scanning the faces in the audience. I was lucky. I had resources that many survivors do not have. A father with means who appeared at exactly the right moment, access to healthcare and legal assistance and therapy. Not everyone has those things. That is why the work you do is so important. That is why organizations like this matter. She gripped the edges of the podium. But I want you to understand something. Even with all those resources, I still had to do the hardest work myself. I still had to look in the mirror every morning and choose to believe I was worth saving. I still had to fight against the voice in my head that has said the abuse was my fault. I still had to rebuild my identity from the ground up after it had been systematically dismantled for years. The room was silent, hanging on her every word. That is the real work of survival, Elena continued. Not just escaping the abuser, not just staying safe, but reclaiming the person you were always meant to be. And that is work that no one can do for you. You have to do it yourself, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time. She stepped back from the podium. I am proof that it is possible, and so is every survivor in this room. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, a young woman approached Elena in the lobby. She was perhaps 25 years old, with dark circles under her eyes and the hunched posture of someone trying to make herself invisible. Mrs. Ashford, she said tentatively. I mean, Ms. Carter. I do not know what to call you. Elena smiled gently. Elena is fine. The young woman swallowed hard. I just wanted to say, your speech, it meant a lot. I am in a situation, a bad situation, and I do not know how to get out. Elena recognized the fear in her eyes, the shame, the desperate hope that someone might understand. What is your name, she asked. Sarah. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. Her mother's name, the woman who had disappeared rather than ask for help. Sarah, Elena said firmly, you are going to get out. I am going to help you. But first I need you to understand something. Whatever you are going through, it is not your fault. Do you understand? It is not your fault. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I keep thinking if I was better, if I tried harder. No, Elena took her hands. That is what he wants you to think. That is how abuse works. It makes you believe the problem is you, but the problem is him. It has always been him, and you deserve better. They talked for an hour. Elena gave Sarah her personal phone number and the contact information for a safe house. She promised to follow up. She promised to help, and she kept those promises. 6 months later, Sarah was free. She had left her abuser with Elena's help. She was living in a shelter while she saved money for her own apartment. She was seeing a therapist. She was putting her life back together, one piece at a time. You saved me, Sarah told Elena over coffee one afternoon. No, Elena replied. You saved yourself. I just showed you the way out. Sarah shook her head. I could not have done it without you. You could have. You would have. It might have taken longer. It might have been harder. But you have strength you do not even know about yet. And one day you will use that strength to help someone else. That is how it works. That is how we break the cycle. Sarah was crying now, quiet tears of gratitude and relief. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. Lena hugged her tightly. You are going to be okay, she said. Better than okay. You are going to be amazing. And she believed it, because she had lived it. 5 years after the worst day of her life, Elena Carter stood in her garden watching her son play. Little Will was not so little anymore. At 5 years old, he was tall for his age, with his mother's eyes and a laugh that sounded exactly like his grandfather's. He was chasing butterflies across the lawn, his sneakers squelching in the morning dew. Mama, he called, come see this. Elena set down her coffee cup and walked toward him. What did you find? He pointed at a caterpillar inching along a flower stem. It is fuzzy. Can I keep it? No, baby. Caterpillars need to be outside to become butterflies. What if it does not want to be a butterfly? What if it wants to stay a caterpillar forever? Elena crouched beside him, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. I think, she said slowly, that becoming a butterfly is what caterpillars are meant to do. It is not always easy. They have to go into a cocoon and change completely. It is probably scary, but when they come out, they can fly. Little Will nodded thoughtfully. Like when you changed. Pop told me you had to go through something hard to become who you are now. Elena's breath caught. William had told him. Some version of the story edited for his age, but true in its essence. Yes, she said, like when I changed. Are you happy you became a butterfly? She looked at her son, at his earnest face and questioning eyes, at the miracle of his existence that had cost her everything and given her everything in return. Yes, she said, I am very happy. He grinned and returned his attention to the caterpillar. I think he wants to stay on this flower. Then we will let him. They watched the caterpillar together until Elena's phone buzzed with a text from William. On my way. See you in 20. Pop Pop is coming, she told little Will. We should get ready. Is he bringing presents? Elena laughed. He always brings presents. They went inside to clean up. Elena helped little Will wash his hands and change his muddy sneakers. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror and saw a woman she barely recognized from 5 years ago. The bruises were long gone. The trauma had faded, not disappeared, but integrated, a part of her story rather than the whole of it. She had built a life she never imagined possible, a career helping others, a home filled with love, a family that spanned 3 generations. She was 36 years old. She was the founder of a nonprofit that had helped over 200 women escape abusive relationships. She was a mother, a daughter, a survivor. She was happy. The doorbell rang. Little Will raced to answer it, throwing the door open to reveal William standing on the porch with his arms full of wrapped packages. Pop, pop, little Will shrieked, launching himself at his grandfather. William caught him with practiced ease, lifting him high into the air. There is my favorite guy. Are you ready for some presents? Always. They went into the living room where little Will tore through the wrapping paper with enthusiastic abandon. William had brought toys and books and a new bike that would require some assembly. You are spoiling him, Elena said, the same words she said every visit. That is what grandfathers do, William replied, the same response he always gave. She laughed and let it go. Some battles were not worth fighting. Later, while little Will played with his new toys, Elena and William sat on the back porch with glasses of wine. Do you remember what you said to me that first day in the hospital? Elena asked. I said a lot of things that day. Which part? That you would never leave. That you were there forever. William nodded. I remember. I did not believe you, Elena admitted. I thought you were saying what you thought I needed to hear. I'd been abandoned so many times by then. By my mother, even though she had her reasons. By Derek. By Jessica. I did not think anyone would actually stay. But I did. You did. William reached over and took her hand. I know I can never make up for 31 years. I know I missed too much, but I want you to know that these past 5 years have been the best of my life. Being your father, being his grandfather. It has given me something I did not know I was missing. Elena squeezed his hand. I thought I knew what family meant. Marriage, shared history, obligation. But that is not what it is at all, is it? No, William agreed. Family is who shows up. Family is who stays. Family is who chooses you even when they do not have to. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin to set. I used to be so angry, Elena said eventually. At Derek, at Victoria, at Jessica, at the universe for letting everything happen. But I am not angry anymore. I just feel grateful. Is that strange? Not strange at all. William's voice was gentle. Anger takes energy. You have better things to spend your energy on now. Little Will came running onto the porch, his new toy truck clutched in his hands. Look, Mama, it has lights. He pressed a button and the truck's headlights flickered on. That is amazing, Elena said with genuine enthusiasm. Show Pop Pop. Little Will climbed into William's lap and demonstrated every feature of the truck, explaining each one with the serious authority of a 5-year-old expert. Elena watched them together, grandfather and grandson, bonded by blood and love, and the miracle of finding each other against impossible odds. This was her family, not the one she had been born into, not the one she had tried to create with Derek. Something different, something stronger. A family built from the ashes of betrayal and held together by choice. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Little Will's explanations faded into sleepy murmurs. William held him gently, his eyes meeting Elena's over the child's head. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For letting me be part of this. For giving me a second chance I did not deserve. You deserved it, Elena replied. You just did not know it yet. She stood and lifted little Will from William's lap. Bedtime for this one. I should go too, William said. Early meeting tomorrow. They walked to the front door together. Elena shifted little Will to one hip and embraced her father with the other arm. Same time next week? She asked. Would not miss it. He kissed her forehead, then little Will's, and walked to his car. Elena watched him drive away, then carried her son upstairs to his bedroom. She tucked him into bed, smoothing the covers over his small body. He was already half asleep, his eyelids fluttering. "I love you," she whispered. "Love you too, Mama," he murmured. She turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to his breathing, even out into sleep. Then she went back downstairs. The house was quiet. The dishes from dinner were still in the sink. There were toys scattered across the living room floor. Tomorrow there would be work and meetings and all the responsibilities of her daily life. But tonight there was peace. Elena poured herself one more glass of wine and went out to the back porch. The stars were emerging now, pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. She thought about Margaret, resting peacefully in the cemetery across town. She thought about her birth mother, Sarah, who had loved her enough to disappear so she would not be a burden. She thought about William, who had built an empire but found meaning only when he discovered a daughter he never knew he had. She thought about Derek, dead by his own hand in a prison cell, consumed by the demons he had refused to face. She thought about Victoria, still serving her sentence, stripped of everything she had schemed for. She thought about Jessica, released 2 years ago, working as a receptionist somewhere in Florida, her life permanently diminished by choices she could never take back. And she thought about herself, Elena Carter, survivor, mother, advocate, daughter, butterfly. She raised her glass to the night sky. "To everyone who helped me get here," she said softly, "and to everyone who tried to stop me, you all made me who I am." She drank deeply. The wine was rich and warm. The night was cool and quiet. Somewhere inside, her son slept safely in his bed. Somewhere across town, her father was driving home with a full heart. Somewhere in the world, women she had helped were building new lives, finding their own wings, learning to fly in time. Elena set down her empty glass and went inside. She washed the dishes. She picked up the vase. She locked the doors and turned off the lights. Then she went upstairs to her bedroom and crawled beneath the covers. She fell asleep within minutes. No nightmares, no sudden jolts awake, just peaceful rest, just home.